Thank you. Now, I know you're kind of sat in your normal church places. My voice will take longer to get to the back of the room, so this whole course will take longer. And I won't be able to hear your questions as clearly. So if any of you who are on the outside, whilst you're observing social distancing, do you want to just jump forward a few seats, just so I can hear you? The rest of you will just have to shout if you're sat too far back. There's seats at the front if anybody wants them. Right. Want me to say a bit about me, Marty? Yeah, right. So I've been coming here for a couple of years now. Originally from Glasgow, but I left such a long time ago, I've lost my accent. A bit like Marty. And I grew up half my life in Northern Ireland in Belfast, so I get Marty. And he said something to me, and I went back to my wife just this week, and I said, I've just heard a term I've not heard for years. Somebody just called me big man. So my background, I worked in adult social care for about 40 years, since I was 4. I started off sort of volunteering when I was about 14 with an adult group of people who had learning disabilities. I then liked it so much that I made 4 of my own and 2 others. So I've got 2 sons with Down syndrome. I've got a daughter with a learning disability and a son who's autistic. My son lives in Northern Yate and he's in supported living. Thank you. Daughter lives in Chatterton, which is just over there, with a housemate. And this is not my job, this bit. It's just that I've been doing this for such a long time. And I'm an old, what you may have heard the term, some of the older ones, NVQ assessors. When you used to do NVQs, you don't do them anymore. This is a level 2 course, so I'll tell you what we're not covering on this one as well. I worked down at Revive Church in Camborne as operations manager for their adult social care services. And because I've done this stuff before, and I've done the courses again and again, because you have to renew yourself every 3 years. So I've done this particular course about 10 times. And then you do refresher courses every year. So Marty said, you know this stuff, why don't you tell us, because we've got to do it anyway. So that's kind of who I am and why they've got me stood up here, and not somebody who knows what they're doing, okay? First time, let's go a sip. So, this is it would be the first sip, wouldn't it? Ah, dear. So, this is a level 2 course. Now, if you did this course normally, it's about 50 to 60 hours study time, which is more than the 2 hours that we've got. Plus, you have to do research on the web or at libraries. And it's not multiple choice, you have to do written exams. But then you do get a proper qualification. So we're not taking 60 hours, we're not doing written tests, and you're not going to get a qualification. But you're going to get lots of really useful practical knowledge, particularly about what we do here in Gateway, in this particular kitchen. And then I'll wind it out. And for some of you who are a little bit older, I will be teaching you how to suck eggs. You'll see I know all that. And some of you young people will go, don't know what he's on about. For some of the older ones as well, there will be, please don't do that anymore, because we don't do that anymore. And young people will say, well, I knew that, right? Because I grew up knowing that, because I'm young. So no apologies for covering bits of knowledge that you actually already know. As we go through it, please put your hand up if I've covered something. And in order to get through all these slides, we're not going to cover every single slide that's in the level 2 course. That would just take far, far too long. I've put what I think are the relevant slides, and we're not actually necessarily going to go through the whole of each slide. Some slides will be, I'm just going to read it, because every word on there is quite relevant. Others, I'll read a bit of it, and I'll say that's basically what you have to know. Other bits, I may say, look, that's the legislation. You don't actually have to know that for this course, because the people that take care of the legislation and make sure that it's all written up, policies and procedures, that will be the wider management team and Marty ultimately, and Elim, who will put all those things in place. Crikey. I'm going to have to look at these, because some of my... There's one, right. My slides are disappearing on here for some reason. I'm going to have to read them off of there. Sorry about this. Right. As a food handler, it is essential you understand the key terms that are associated with food safety. That's what we're here for. Food safety, contamination, and cross-contamination are kind of the three main areas that we're going to cover. And we're going to expand on bits, and we're going to move past bits. If you all sit there and it's obvious you're nodding your heads, I'll just move forward. If I see lots of hands going up, I'll stop, slow down, and go into a bit more detail. Okay? Food safety, this refers to the safe handling, preparation, cooking, and storage of food to prevent it from containing anything that could harm the consumer. Contamination, this is the presence or introduction of a hazard into food. It includes anything microbiological, physical, chemical, or allergenic that may affect the safety of the food. Sticking plasters and ends of fingers and things that you might get in food. Cross-contamination, this is the presence by which bacteria are transferred from a surface, like a chopping board or a worktop, that says that, worktop, onto ready-to-eat food. This results in the food becoming contaminated. That can lead to illness, and that's the one thing we don't want to happen. I can face you now. Right. 4 important key definitions. Yes. A food safety hazard is something that has the potential to contaminate food and cause harm. That's kind of the crux of what we don't want to do. Obviously, we want to poison anyone. I'm going to have to put my glasses down like an old teacher and look over them at you and look through them at this. So, microbiological hazard is where food becomes contaminated by microorganisms, such as bacteria, molds, parasites. They've shown you a loaf there. Typically, you get that green-blue mold on your loaf. So you cut the end off, throw it away, and then you use the rest of it. No. A physical hazard is the presence of a foreign object in food products, such as pieces of glass, hair, pins. People will often find. I was in a restaurant once, and luckily I saw it happening. And I had soup, or I don't know if it's soup or stew, and a screw fell down and it plopped in my dinner. And I thought, right, that's not good. So I took it over, and the person attempted to just take it out and hand me back the plate. That's another no. In fact, I'll just keep it to the odd yes and no. No being no. Don't ever do that. This is an interesting one. A chemical hazard is the presence of harmless substances in food, such as insecticides, cleaning chemicals, toxins, and environmental contaminants. Now, people will say, right, give it a good old wipe down, good old clean, that's it. And you'll grab a bottle of this, and they'll spray the whole kitchen down, they'll wipe it all down. Great, that's it nice and clean. This is one for the old ones. So somebody will come along with some DDT, and they'll spray the whole room with it. And then they'll leave it, and then they'll walk off. And then some unsuspecting person will wander in. So I'm moving. Sorry, Phil. Just before I started, this particular presentation became twice as difficult. Just like that. Because Phil said to me, You're not going to move, are you? Like what Marty does. Yeah, I was planning to. So I'm going to try and stand in one place. If I do wander off, sorry, Phil. He said the cameras move anyway, so it's all right, but it does make people seasick, so I'll try not to. As important as it is to keep places clean and sanitized, you can over-sanitize. You can over-contaminate with cleansing chemicals, which can just as easily cause you harm. So as we go through this, you'll see that there are some guidelines as to how to clean down, to wipe down, to rinse, and if needs be, dry off, so that it's in the best position or place to then prepare food on. Not necessarily swimming with bleach, because that's not good for you. Kill all the germs, but kill you as well. So it's not good. So those two are examples of slides that I'll talk you through. What's coming up? That's the one. Right. I'm only going to read the grey bit. So you'll see how I'm going to go through this quickly on some of them, a bit more slowly on the others, okay? This is the one that'll soak in some breath here. The law states, that's the law, that everyone who handles food or who is associated with food as part of their work has a responsibility to ensure that the food they handle is safe for people to consume. Now that bit's quite important. The law states. That's not a good idea. And that's not like, let's impress our family and friends with how clean our kitchen is. The law states that you must follow certain rules. The good news is that all the rules and regulations, all the policies and procedures that you will need to operate safely, I say ultimately will be provided by Marty and will be fed through the various management teams. You will, provided you act with due diligence, and it's a word that's going to come up a bit later, provided you do as best you can what you've been asked to do. And you say, well, that's the way I was shown it. I was trained and they said you do this. You're fine, because you've done exactly what you were shown to do. Somebody higher up may then get taken to task, but that's not your problem. However, if you've been told you should prepare food or anything that's for consumption in this way, and you say, yeah, but what do they know? I'll do it this way. You know, slap, 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 there you go. Then you become the person who the law will hold responsible. Because they'll say, well, you had policies and procedures, you had rules and regulations, you were shown the manner in which you do all these things, you had a bit of training as well. You should have known if it falls on the floor. Don't just pick it up and, that'll do, and give it to somebody. So it's your responsibility. So when we go through this, think of, this is me being held to account for this. But provided I listen, if you want to, and do everything I'm told, you're fine. And one of the reasons why we're doing this is to make sure that you're fine, so that you understand what can go wrong in a kitchen, what the likelihood is of somebody coming to some sort of harm, and how to avoid that happening as best you possibly can. And bad things happen, provided you didn't let them happen by picking bread up off the floor. It could be a supplier started putting something into the meat that you knew nothing, wasn't on the label, wasn't on anything, but it's horse meat. How could you have known? It's not your problem. Okay? Are you happy with that bit? You're responsible, but if you follow the regulations, you're safe. Yeah. That was better. And these are the basics, really. And I'm going to just read it through so that I don't miss anything. In order to keep food safe from contamination and comply with the law, it is your duty keep yourself clean and maintain high standards of personal hygiene. So don't come in when you've been fixing the car and you're covered in grease and dirt in your old overalls that you used last week to paint the garden fence, and the week before when you were spraying all that insecticide in the garden, and then come in thinking that'll be all right. Get a bit of rub down, you know. So, you know, if you're provided with one or if there's one there, wear an apron if you're working with food. That creates something of a barrier between what you've got on, even if you think it's clean, bit of a barrier between you and the food, which is always good. Now, this may not have happened in the last 20 years, but it's been great. If there's one good thing, wash your hands. This last COVID thing has said, wash your hands. Now, something like, but 140, 150 years ago, medicine was at its early stages, and invasive medicine like operations, you know, dissections, cutting people in half, and all that thing, never a good idea. But the survival rate was pretty poor. If it came to the point where you had to have a leg amputated, you were about 10% chance at best that you would live through that. Whereas nowadays, you've got pretty close to, provided there's nothing else wrong with you, pretty close to 100% chance that you're going to survive an amputation. Because we've got wonderful hospitals, certainly in the Western world, where, you know, we use all the right bits and pieces and things, and you're safe. But 150 years ago, somebody came up with this idea, and they said, in between operating on that person's leg and then taking that person's tonsils out and then going across and taking that person's arm, all these different operations, why don't you wash your hands in between? That's a daft idea, I haven't got time for that. Now, there was 2 hospitals that did this. One was a teaching hospital, and one was at the hospital for the people that didn't have much money, so they couldn't pay for care. So they got sort of secondary care. They got the junior doctors who were being taught how to start. This is how you cut someone up. Don't let them loose on the paying customers. Put them on the free people. But because they were young and inexperienced and didn't know any better, they said, well, maybe we'll try this thing, washing our hands. Now, the survival rates for the people who were operated in the free hospital went up to nearly 70% for the same operations, whilst the ones in the teaching hospital remained the same, 10%. In fact, less than 10%. And then eventually they then worked out, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe washing contaminants off your hands before you touch somebody else is a really good idea. And we used to have the flu, catch it, bin it idea. Now we've got wash your hands for 20 seconds, use antibacterial soaps. So we know that keeping yourself clean and your hands clean greatly reduces the risk of cross-contamination, certainly with food, if not anything else. Keep your workplace clean and disinfected. Now, we very rarely these days use bleach. Now, I know people of a certain age will swear by bleach. You can't beat bleach. All these modern things, they're all right, but they don't beat some neat bleach. Straight on a cloth. Leave it to dry. Takes all the colour out your worktop. It's absolutely fine. Again, the church will provide you with the correct cleaning solutions. Use them. And don't think, there's only about an eighth left in that one, and there's about a quarter in that. And I'll tell you what, but if we put them all in, we'll have one great big, we can chuck those 2 away, recycle them because we're doing really good, and we'll have this great big one in and start spraying that. You don't know what you're spraying. You don't know if it's going to explode as soon as it leaves the nozzle. You don't know if it explodes or goes up light with a naked flame. Never, never, never put things in and out of bottles. Or if the bottle's got to the bottom and you think, oh, it's a bit big, haven't got room in the cupboard, I'll put it in this old drinks bottle here. Don't ever do that, because people will drink it. There has been a case where in a care home, and people went to jail, and the care home was fined loads and loads of money, because some of the staff decided to put some of the cleaning chemicals in much smaller drinks bottles. And in the middle of the night, whilst they'd all gone off for a quick nap, even though they weren't supposed to, in dementia wards, people got up in the middle of the night and wander. And they go in places, and they're looking for something generally. They don't know what they're looking for, but they're looking for something. Oh, and a number of them drank bleaches and various other things. At least one person died as a result of it, and I think 3 were taken to hospital for an extended amount of time. Not something you want on your conscience, not something you want for your employer, and certainly not what the person who drank it wanted. I didn't ask what was in this, did I? Wear suitable, clean and washable protective clothing. Again, depending on the activities you're doing, remember, sorry, I should have said this right at the beginning. This is a catering course. So this assumes that you're actually working in a fully functioning kitchen where there's, 10 staff, 15 staff working in there, all doing different jobs, some working with raw vegetables, some working with raw meats, some working with sauces and all different things. So some of the things here, I'll sort of wink to you and say, you're not really going to be going to these extents, but you may as well know what the rules are. Because if I've got the slide in front of me, I may as well tell you what you'd be expected to do in a bigger arena, and all you do is just do the same thing, but on a smaller scale when we're here. So I don't think it's going to be the wrong thing to tell you what would happen in a restaurant, because this is a catering course, a level 2 catering course. So wear suitable, clean, protective, washable protective clothing. Again, Marty and the team, you will be provided, if it's needed, with gloves, if required, with plastic aprons, if required, with face masks, if required, or with general aprons which can be washed, if required. And you'll never be asked to bring in your own things. So if you're ever doing anything to be handling food, if I just say Marty every time, can we agree that it's not necessarily poor Marty over there, but he is the pastor. And bottom line, at some point it all goes to Marty. So he will make sure, by making sure he delegates that responsibility to the people who will make sure that you get all the bits and pieces that you need. Do everything possible to protect food from contamination. Now, this is common sense. And this is where due diligence is going to come in. And you'll see towards the end, right at the very end, where I say the get out of jail card is don't go to jail in the first place, because do this. So just use your brain. Don't be cutting raw meat up. Chuck it in the pan and then turn round and put some bread on it. Because you all know what's going to happen. You're going to get the contaminants from the meat going on to the cooked food. So just think very carefully. We talk later about the colour board. So if you're thinking, what's a red for, what's a blue for, what's a white for, I'm going to cover that a little bit later. So there's a few points where if you do raise your hand, I will answer your question. But if I know it's coming up, because I've ran through it, I'll say, good question, it's coming up later. Okay? I'm not ignoring your question, but I'll let you know that we're covering it. Store, prepare, and display food at safe temperatures. Those set temperatures, you'll be told what they are. No need to worry. You don't have to work out, I wonder what the best temperature is. Probably about 15 degrees, that'll do. No, you'll be told how hot food should be kept at if it's been stored. We don't do that here, so it doesn't really matter. You may as well know. When you chill food, how quickly you should chill it. Do you take your piping hot stew that you know you're not going to use today, so you're going to chill it down, put it straight in the fridge? That'll cool it down quick, won't it? No. See, nice knowing knows. That's what I like. Nice knowing we wouldn't do that. What me things gone? Oh, come back. And report illnesses, including diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, cuts, wounds, and skin conditions and infections, it says to your supervisor. Again, I apologise, this is a catering course, so it assumes that you're working in a kitchen and you've got an assistant chef and then a management team and all the rest of it in there. So some of the terms won't be absolutely relevant. Just think Marty, supervisor, or whoever Marty appoints as supervisor. Yes. Any questions on that? Most of it, I hope, is pretty common sense. Lots of nods? Right. They will start going quicker now. That was the bedding in of the foundation of the course. We're now going to, if you're worried and thinking, it's taking half an hour, it's only 4 slides, be here all night. We're going to go quicker now. This is one of the skim over ones. There's a food hygiene rating scheme where food hygiene inspectors will come in and rate the state of your kitchens and how you store food, handle food, and all the rest of it. And if you go to any place that serves food, you'll have seen one of these. If it says 0 or 1, maybe go somewhere else. The kebab van's probably got a 1. If we ever came to it, we would have a 5, wouldn't we? Yes. Because Marty would appoint somebody to make sure that we had a 5. Yeah? Yes. Yes. If you're an establishment that handles and serves food, and that's like anything out there where they sell sandwiches or just a cake or 3-course meals or anything, at any point, they generally don't because they haven't got the manpower. They wouldn't, for no good reason, come in. But they can, at any point they want, just say, "Hi, we've come to inspect you. It's not convenient, sorry. We're coming to inspect you. We have the power to inspect you, and we're inspecting you. You have to stop, and they'll do whatever they have to do, and you have to just stand back and say, carry on." And they have that power. Now, if they ever come into Gateway or anything that Gateway do, they'll leave the building saying, "Fantastic job that is. You're brilliant, you are." Yes. Yes, they will. Yes. Did that answer that? Yes, any time. So don't ever think, "I'll clear that mess up tomorrow." No one's coming in. If they come in that afternoon and they go, "What's all that?" "I was going to clear it up in the morning." "Oh, were you?" Yeah, yes, yeah. Is that there every night? "Oh, no, it's the first time. It never happened before." I can only judge you on what I see right now, because I wasn't here last night. I'm not here tomorrow night. So you'll be judged on exactly how you leave the kitchen. So if you're thinking, "Oh, right, okay. Oh, EastEnders starts at 7:30. Oh, I tell you what, I'll come in early in the morning. I'll come in early. That'll do." And on the way out, someone's coming in to inspect your property. Too late. Again, these are the things that we will say, here's the musts and must not do's. If you follow them, and then an inspector comes in as you're leaving the building and says, "Stop right there, I'm coming in." You go, "That's fine. I've done everything I was supposed to do." So you know that if it's well led, and it will be well led here at Gateway, you can be assured it's going to be a well-led service. Anything that happens in that kitchen will be well-led and well-managed. You have nothing to worry about, provided you do what you're asked to do. Okay? You all believe that? Good. Legislation, there's not a lot I'm going to cover on this one. Sorry, I haven't got it yet. I went back. Phil? My clicker's not working, Phil. Ah, there we go. And go with me. Somebody wake Philip. Give him a nudge. Yes? Yes, please. Yeah. And the next one. Shall I just shout over to move them, yeah? Yeah. Okay. Right, very, very quickly. Employers, I won't say it, have additional responsibilities under food safety law. These include lots of things. Not something you have to worry about, it's something the employer has to worry about. Again, follow the guidelines, not a worry at all. Okay? Oh, it's working again. Right. Again, I'll read this a little bit. The Food Standards Agency and Food Standards Scotland, alongside local councils, are responsible for protecting the public from risks that may arise due to the consumption of certain foods. These authorised officers have the power to, and then they can just do anything, within reason. Right. And enforcement officers also have the authority to serve legal notices if they detect poor food hygiene and safety during their inspections. They can put notices on you, they can temporarily close you down, they can shut you down, and the bit you won't like, but yes, there we go. Prosecution. It's gone quiet. Failing to abide by food safety laws can lead to prosecution, which may be heard in the magistrates or the Crown Court. Now, I think this has been updated, this one of these bits, but I'll read it for what it is because it doesn't change anything. So, officers, you can be fined in the magistrates' court, and the Crown Courts can fine you an unlimited amount. The magistrates' courts have got a limit as to how much they can fine you for. If it's serious enough, they'll send it up to the Crown Courts, and whatever they decide. You can be sentenced to a prison sentence term of up to 6 months in the magistrates' court, but can be up to 2 years in the Crown Court. I think that may have been increased slightly in the last couple of years, but again, it's not going to alter. Just don't ever do anything that puts you in a position to be there so you don't have to worry about it. However, the main defence under food safety law is known as due diligence defence. I think we'll read through this. A claim to due diligence defence, you must be able to prove you did everything reasonably practicable. Now, that's a legal word, they like using that word. The word reasonably practicable comes up in law all over the place. And it's basically saying is, look, you did everything that you could reasonably have done. You could not possibly have known that whilst you were airing the building, somebody 2 blocks away sprayed a dangerous chemical. And it happened to waft through your window. You couldn't see it, you couldn't smell it, and it contaminated your food. What were you expected to do? Nothing. There's things that you're not expected to be able to do. Reasonably practicable. So is it reasonable? Someone of you're only human. You can only be expected to do so much. Did you do all the things that you were supposed to do? Did you read the policies and procedures? Did you follow the regulations? Did you check the temperatures? Again, this is a level 2 catering course, so you wouldn't be necessarily doing all these things. Did you do all those bits? Did them all. Did everything I'm supposed to do. And that still happened. Well, that's fair enough. Due diligence. You did as much as you possibly could. No one's going to fine you. No one's going to take you to court. You're not going to go to prison. You did everything that was reasonable. And it's the word reasonable. Well, why didn't you have one of those Geiger counters on your back while you were cooking the chips? And why didn't you have one of those? Well, no. Nobody's got one of them. And nobody expects you to have one of those. So, reasonable. Are you happy with the term due diligence and reasonably practical? Do you feel as though you're safe to prepare food here, knowing that all the regulations will be in place to protect you, as well as protecting anyone who is served food by you, that you will be safe, you will be as safe as they will? Are you confident in that? We haven't discussed what the bits you have to do yet, but on the face of it, anybody thinking, I'm not going anywhere near that kitchen because I don't want to go to jail? Anyone? Good. Good. And you needn't be either, because we're brilliant. Aren't you, Bex? Right, going to some meaty stuff now. Microbiological hazards. It's like a Marvel film, this is. Right. Microbiological contamination of food is the most common reason behind outbreaks of food poisoning and spoilage. Now, there's two areas here that I'll touch on that are like the number ones that you really have to be aware of. Almost everything else is, well, if you follow those two rules, everything else you're going to be even safer and even safer and even safer with these different food products. Microbiological contamination includes contamination from bacteria, viruses, and molds. We're going to talk about them a couple of slides, okay? And this was mentioned earlier, so don't worry. Microbiological hazards occur when food becomes contaminated by the microorganisms found in air, food, water, soil, animals, and the human body. Hence, you shouldn't sneeze over food. Obvious. Many microorganisms are necessary for life. So you know those Yakult? It's full of really good, really healthy, good for you micro things. You know, drink one a day, you'll be healthy. Yeah, we need some germs around us. We've got little things. Don't want to creep you out. We've got little beasties crawling on our eyelids and all through our skin and in our hair, if you had any. You know, and they're good. They're our friends. They're like that little kitten we saw under the Bible. They're the nice ones. And then there's the jungle lions, and there's a big cat, and those are the ones we don't want. Yeah, so some bacteria are necessary for digestion. However, in the right conditions, some microorganisms can become dangerous and lead to foodborne illnesses. Now, the thing about germs, as you probably know, they multiply. So an example is COVID. Somebody sneezes all over you. How dare they? They've got COVID. They've breathed on you, they've sneezed on you. You haven't got COVID yet. Well, you have. You've got a few little microorganisms of COVID inside you. Now, if it's only a few, and you're fit and healthy, you drink lots of water and food and things, your body's got this way of, whoosh, it all comes back out again without too many details. It all comes back out again. And if you're fit and healthy and you pump your lungs out and you breathe stuff out and you think that, it'll go. But what happens with people who have got, you know, limited movement, so they can't do all that sort of stuff. They've got pre-existing conditions that make them more susceptible. They are forgive me, elderly or very young, or have recently just recovered from an operation, so their immune system's slightly down. Those organisms take hold, and then they multiply, and then they multiply. And then 2, 3, 4, typically day 5, they go, oh, there's lots of us now, and poof, and then you fall down, and your head's doing that, and you're sweating, and that's when it's really taken hold. At which point your body is saying, let's produce lots of antibodies and fight this thing. And after a while, it overcomes it, hopefully, and then you gradually get better, and you get back to health, and you're better again. So, if, I've got to be careful what I say about food. If someone had just been contaminated with some bacteria, a little bit of bacteria, and you ate it straight away, there's a chance you might be all right. We don't work with chances. There's every chance that you'd eat it and 24 hours later, bit of a dicky tummy, that's as much as you get. No. We don't take chances with bacteria. We can't see them. We can't smell them. We can't feel them. So they're far, far too small for us to know that they're there. How do we know how much is there? So we have to assume there's loads of it there, so that we follow all the usual rules and regulations for microbiological hazards. It goes into telling you what they are in a sec here. Right. This is some of the bits you'll want to know now. Statistics provided by the Food Standards Agency shows just how prominent food-related illnesses are in the UK. It's not by accident they put a kebab on there, okay? There are over 500,000 cases of food poisoning each year as a result of food poisoning bacteria. The next bit is not relevant. This must have been based on a Scottish one, I think. Campylobacter is the most common cause of food poisoning in the UK. That's the big one. That's the one. Around 2,500 people are admitted to hospital each year due to salmonella poisoning. This is the important one. Most cases of food poisoning are linked to poultry meat. Most cases. That's the one that makes most people ill. Now, I told you earlier there are some people who will say, this is how you get rid of all the germs. And I have to be careful not to generalize here. So some people will open up the chicken and get the giblets out if they're in there, or if not, it's ready to go. Hang on a sec. They'll get the tap on and they'll rinse it properly. Get all those germs off, yeah? Up and down, inside out, you know. There we go. That's it. That's it ready now. What are you going to do with your chicken? You're going to eat it now. You're going to cook it. So what was the point of washing it under the tap if you're going to cook it? The cooking will get rid of all those nasty germs. But what you've done is spread it all around the kitchen. So, and it's amazing. If you get one of those, and a great idea is to get one of those, is the Nerf one of the things you fire, or does it fire water? It's bullets. What's the big water soakers? Super soaker. Get a super soaker, boom, boom, load it up. I don't know if you pump them or what you do. I'm just doing this. Give it one spray. If you can, put some coloured water in it. It's not going to damage all your kitchen and, discolour it. Do one scoosh against your worktop or against the back, splashback. And then go round and look at just how far that one splash went. It will easily go from that wall, easily to here. That's most people's kitchens. That's the width and breadth of most people's kitchens. So whilst you were cleaning your chicken, you spread all that bacteria all around the kitchen. And I can assure you, you'd need to be an industrial cleaner to go into that kitchen and clean every single little bit of all those splashes that have gone all around your kitchen. So now, some manufacturers now put on the actual instructions, do not rinse under the tap. Take it out, straight onto the baking tray or whatever, straight in the oven. You don't need to wash it. You'll do far, far more harm by washing any sort of meat, but particularly poultry, excuse me, because all you're doing is spreading germs. You're not cleaning anything, because you could have held it under that tap for 10 minutes. Taking it away, it's just as likely. I mean, would you lick it now? No, I wouldn't. Because it's just as likely to cause you the same harm it was going to cause you 10 minutes ago. Well, you were spreading germs everywhere. So it doesn't work, and it's completely the wrong thing to do. Just don't do it. And if you do it at home, that's your silly fault. Now, understand one thing. I don't know if it actually covers it on here. And it's I'll try and not get bogged down in the law here. If you decide it's your house, and it's your kitchen, and that's your kitchen cupboard, and it's your fridge, and you go in there, and you see a bit of cheese with some mold on it, but it's only on the outside bit. You cut that chunk off, because you're going to make cheese on toast. So the grill's going to kill all the germs, isn't it? Of course it is. So you chuck that bit away, and you make whatever. You make a sandwich, and you think, oh, now we're going to touch on this best before or use by a couple of days. That'll be all right. Hey, a couple of days. If it was okay 4 days ago, it's bound to be okay now. Surely. What's that funny little shiny bit on the bacon? If I cook it properly, I'll make it nice and crispy. That'll kill all that, but it'll be fine. And then you've got a rotten stomach the next day. You're off work for 2 days, 3 days. Who, according to the law, who's going to come along and take you to the magistrate's court or to the Crown Court? Or who's going to give you a 2-year jail sentence? Any ideas? We've got some nobodies, right? Anyone think of trading standards, environmental health? Anyone? No one cares. If you're full enough to poison yourself, you go ahead. I suggest you don't. But it's down to you. Because somebody can't keep watching over your shoulder, and you're allowed to do that to a certain extent, But what you can't do is invite me round for tea. Right? You're not a restaurant, are you? So if I came round your house, Becky, you go, it's all right, I'm not a restaurant. They won't come round checking my house. That's fine. Right, hang on. Shall we give the good meat to Mark, or shall we have the bit from last week? Yeah, give him the old stuff. He didn't send us a Christmas card last year. He'll have the old stuff. I become ill. Now, I might take you to the civil court and say, you poisoned me. Because you didn't have due care and diligence. You didn't think about my well-being. And I'm not very happy with that. It doesn't matter that you're not a restaurant. So in everything you do, what you do to yourself's up to you. What you do to anybody else, and I even include the old man, if you poison him. You can't just do that either. So that's kind of setting the scene for where the responsibility lies for what you do. So don't clean your meats. Read the labels. Often now the labels will tell you how to deal with this particular product. And because poultry meat is the single biggest cause of food poisoning, take it really, really seriously. If you do that one thing and never cause poultry to get spread all over your kitchen raw, you'll go a long way to keeping yourself reasonably safe in the kitchen. Now, if you do it here, that will be the case where we go, we told you not to. Yeah, it was you that did it. Because we're not going to take responsibility. We told you, don't do that. I mean, you've been nodding all the way through. You know not to do this. So why did you do it? Ah, I'm bothered. You know, yeah, I was in a hurry, you know. So, right, back on the lighter note now, shall we? Not frighten everyone. Right, and here's all the nice bits that happen. Food poisoning is an acute illness which can occur immediately, within hours, or within weeks of eating contaminated foods. There are some bacteria in soil which you can eat it and think, well, that was lovely. 2 weeks later, you think, oh, I'll tell you what, I've got a wind and a bit of heartburn. Don't know what that is. I've eaten nothing this week, and certainly not today. 2 weeks later, you've got vomiting and diarrhea, and you're thinking, well, where'd that come from? You go to the doctor, he takes a sample, and he says, oh, you've got XYZ. You think, that's that day we went to the petting zoo. Yeah, and we had there's a nice big pig. Oh, he's lovely, isn't he? Ooh, he's a bit dirty. That's all right. There's the cow, lovely cow. There's the little lambs, they're lovely, they are. Oh, God love them. Yeah. Sandwich, oh, go on then. Yes, lovely, lovely. I worked down in Cornwall, did I mention that? Yeah. And they have something called pasties down there. I don't know if you've heard of pasties. Right? They're like half-round things, if you never saw one, right? And they're all crimped on the end. Does anyone know why they make pasties the way and the shape that they are? If you do, don't say. Does anyone else know? Right. Okay. So, when they were down the mines, yeah, and they're digging away for tin or whatever they're digging away for, there are some serious chemicals down there. Anyone know what you can tell me now? What are they? Right. There are some poisons down there. And they get on your hands. Now, the thing about tin miners in Cornwall, they didn't have the same washing facilities and bathrooms down in the pit that we have when we're at our work. Because your workplace has to have certain, you have to have toilets and you have to have wash hand basins and things. Then they didn't have any of that. So they had all these germs plus poisons that came out of the ground, particular to the thing they were mining. So, in order not to eat that, because they're very smart, the crimping bit, that's the bit that you hold with your dirty hands. And you eat all the bits. You're left with this little smiley face, and you throw that away. That way you haven't touched the food. So even way back then, they knew, best not put these in my mouth. But if I touch, how can we get something to eat? We're down there in the pit all day. We can't nip off at lunchtime down to McDonald's. What are we going to do? Make something that you don't have to touch it. So even back then they knew, if you can't wash your hands, at least almost like wearing gloves, don't touch the food, you know. Symptoms usually last from 1 to 7 days and include diarrhea, abdominal pains and cramps, vomiting, nausea, fever, dehydration and collapse. Most people suffer dehydration because they can't keep fluids down. So they then get dehydrated, and then that's another problem on top of the problem you've already got. Is that up there? It is, yeah. Anybody can get food poisoning, obviously. Most people make a full recovery. If you treat it well, if you go to the doctor, if you can keep your fluids up, most food poisoning is not nice. You know, you've got a rotten time, but you'll more than likely get better. Most of us will. But some people, those most at risk from food poisoning complications, are people whose immune systems are compromised. Like I said earlier, young children, the elderly, people who are ill or recovering from an illness, pregnant women, their unborn babies, and nursing mothers. Any young people come to this church? That's important then. We'll get any elderly people? I don't think we have we? Oh, yeah, getting there. Okay, a couple. People who are ill or recovering from an illness. Any of those in here? Pregnant women. I think we've got a few of those. So, yeah, everyone that comes here could be at a much higher risk of having complications because of their immune system being somewhat compromised. So really important that we do a good job when it comes to, yeah, that's a nice one, isn't it? Right. Food spoilage occurs when food becomes unsuitable to ingest by the consumer. Some foods, it's obvious. You can see that you're not going to eat them. Like the Philadelphia cheese. Now, remember, you can't look at that and fold it back and check the lid and say, well, it says 4th of November. That'll be all right. Eh? He's sure this is only the 31st of October. We've got 4 days to go. You know, sometimes you have to look at the food itself and think, yeah, it's not been stored properly, has it? It's been put next to something that's contaminated it, or something has happened that is pushed past the normal. We put a label on it. It says it's probably good for so many days. But if you stored it at too high a heat, or you stored it next to the wrong foodstuffs, or it's been contaminated, gives you an, well, that's not bad, that. Well, I'll have that tomorrow. Put the lid on. There you go. It's just been contaminated. So you can forget the safety. People do it. People all do it. How many people drink from the milk carton? Your kids? Stop it. You know, don't ever condone violence. There's various causes of food spoilage. Light. Sometimes it will say, store in a cool, dark place, for a reason. Light will have a photo effect on the food and break it down and then cause it to degrade way before the sell-by dates. Heat. So if it says store in the fridge and you leave it out by the windowsill with the lights coming through, not a good idea. Humidity and temperature. Temperature, heat. Kind of doubled up there a bit. These factors create an environment in which bacteria, molds, and yeast can develop. Like I was saying earlier, one finger in, if you get that whole tub within the hour, you're all right. Don't do it. In your own house, you're all right. Because there hasn't been time for that amount of bacteria to grow yet. But we don't do that. Never stick your fingers in food. Don't play with your food. Unlike pathogenic contamination, the effects of food spoilage bacteria can be seen, tasted, and smelled. So normally, if it's meats, like cold meats, bacon, especially ham, ham's got that sort of silvery sort of surface to it, irrespective of the sell-by date on it. If you look at it, you think, oh, a bit of a smell. You're going to chuck it away. Stickiness of slime. How many times you think, oh, you pick up your plum or your peach, oh, and you turn it over and it's been sat and it's all sticky and it's gone. Now you don't know how far up. Now lots of people will just cut the bottom bit off. That'll do. The rest of it's all right. In your own house, do what you like. That's absolutely fine. You would not do that here. If there's a sign of spoilage on food, you don't just cut off the bit that you think, because you haven't got this super X-ray vision that can see germs any more than I have. So you chuck it out. Okay? Strange textures. I don't know what that means. You know what strange textures means? Lumps in your bread, maybe. Why is the sign for biscuit that? Cake's that. biscuits that, you know?
Because they used to knock the weevils out of biscuits on the ships.
Yeah. I love Macaron. But one of the things about Macaron, the sign for biscuit is, you've got an oat biscuit, let's say. That looks fine. Can't see anything on that at all. Yum, 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 yum. Cotton. It's fine. What the sailors would do is they would get the biscuit and they would just break it like that. And then they'd pick out all the little creepy crawlies that are in there. And then they'd eat it. Because at sea, you can't go throwing away food. That was way back then. Don't bake biscuits and take the things out. No. It's one of those no's. But the weevils, that's why you would do that. I knew you'd know that. I was hoping you'd know that. Mold. Now, mold's one of those funny ones, right? Because you've not just got mold, you've got spores as well. I think we cover spores in a second. Now, this is not quite the same, but it's a simile of how it works. You've dug your ground up, and you've fertilized it perhaps. It's ready, it's ripe. As soon as you plant something in there, boy, is it going to grow. It's perfect ground. And your daughter comes along, bless her, your son, little. Look what I've got. I've got a dandelion. Whew. Lovely. Right? Now, we all know what's on those pretty little things. There's a little seed on the end. Now, whilst that dandelion seed's flying through the air and looking all pretty, and the wind's blowing it, it's fine. It hasn't come into contact with anything yet, so it's perfectly safe. Fine. As soon as it lands in your wonderfully prepared soil, within about 4 minutes, a dandelion will grow. Just like that. Ask any gardener, right? Just grow straight away. So there are certain spores that act in that way until they actually reach the hosts, and sometimes that's you. Of themselves, they're not dangerous. Well, I'm sure there's a slide that covers this. If not, ask me. If it's troubling you, ask me at the end. So some things don't of themselves cause any harm. You open up your bread and it's sealed in a bag. Now, normally, first thing you'll see is little spots, yeah, on your bread, on the outside, because you won't be looking. You'll take one out and you'll go, oh, what's that? Oh, get rid of that bit. That's fine. And you just pick the bits off. Yeah. Now, if you take the whole loaf out and keep it in its shape, and look at all the little spores, and get one of your children's hands, right? And take one of your children's, might even be your own, take one of your children's hands and look roughly where all the little dots are. They'll match up with your child's hand, especially if it's one of the ones that you cut. Because with this dirty hand, with all these germs on it, be on the bread, and then they'll cut a slice of bread, then they'll put it back in the bag again. Like that. So you'll have a couple of dots on the outside here, and a nice little handprint with your dirty hand on it. It's usually the kids, usually a smaller handprint. Now, because that's been sealed in that bag, the temptation is to pick off a couple of little bits. Just a couple of little bits. It's not like it's the cheese, it's not like that, it's not everywhere. A couple of bits. What you can't see is the bits that haven't turned blue and grown furry yet. They're all inside the air in that bag. And as soon as you move the bread in the bag, you disturbed all the air, disturbed all the germs, it spread a little bit more, and it's all over your bread. So as soon as you start to see mold on your bread, chuck it out. Don't eat it. Cheese is the big one. So many people will think, well, if I just cut all the bits on the outside, all 6 sides, cut them all out, the bit in the middle is absolutely fine. One, it's not, because it can be inside the cheese as well. And 2, the knife you cut it with has cut past some of that germ and spread it immediately on its blade to the next bit that you're cutting off, and to the next bit. So you've just spread it again all the way around. Now, there are some cheeses, as you know, blue cheeses and things, which have got blue mold in the middle. What's all that about? Can you eat that? Who likes blue cheese? Yeah, I can't eat blue cheese because I'm ill. That's cultured bacteria. That's bacteria that went to public school, okay? So it's different. And it's natural. It's part of those natural things we talked about in the Yakult. Other products are available. Drinks. Because they're meant to do that, and they're safe, and they're good. My thing's disappeared. Is it back on there still? Yeah, right. The production of gas, that's from the product, okay? Not stuff that you eat that produces gas. Bulging cans. People, did you know you can keep things in a can for about 40 years, safe? Don't read the label, safe as houses, absolutely fine. No, right? However, sometimes you'll see a can has been slightly moved, and you think, somebody's going to drop that. Or they were putting it on the shelf, pick it back up, put it on, turn it around so they don't see it. Somebody will put it in the bag and buy it. Chances are there's gases in there which have distorted or warped the actual tin itself, because it's been in the back of your cupboard. Nobody likes tinned anchovies, but just in case somebody comes in and wants some, well, I've got some. That was 10 years ago. Chuck them out. Leaking packages. Now, there's been this thing recently about CO2, that we haven't got enough of it. But we've got too much of it, but we haven't got enough of it industrially to put into our lettuce bags and things, and they seal it, so there's no oxygen in there. And oxygen is one of those elements that will cause things to have a chemical reaction. So they shove in things. Leaking packages. If you've got, we've all seen typically fruit and veg, and we all, every now and again, have to take that tray out and empty all this stuff into the bin. And then we have to go to the sink and swish it through, and they take ages to try and dry. Because there's all these little bits, isn't there, all over it. Because the things have gone off and they've started to leak and ooze out. And that's a sign that things are not good. If it's oozing out and it's not the way it's meant to be, if the product doesn't look like it's supposed to look, be worried and throw it away. Discoloration, obviously. Meats especially go a funny colour. Your molds are easier to see. Discoloration you have to look at. Smell, that's one of the big ones. The kind of first thing you would do with any sort of product is you'd look at it, you'd smell it, don't taste it because you don't go there yet. Read the labels and just look. Generally have a sort of good look over it before you use it, even if it's still in date. Just have a quick look at it. It's a sensible thing to do. Go to the next slide, please, Phil. Thank you. Food spoilage is a major cause of food wastage, so you should always try and prevent it, because you just should. It's wasteful to waste food, and generally there's no need for it. If we do our jobs properly, store it correctly, it should last the amount of time that it's supposed to last. Little known one, burnt toast, it's not good for you. So don't, I mean, in a restaurant or in a cafe, you wouldn't serve burnt toast, but you'll eat it at home. Some people will go, well, just scrape the top bit in the bin, that'll be fine. And then your butter's covered in it, isn't it? Because you used the same knife. Not serious, and you need to consume quite a bit of it, or most people have to consume quite a bit of it. But again, anything that's burnt. So people who cook their sausages on the barbecue and think, make sure it's cooked all the way through, because that's safe. And yes, it's cooked all the way through, but it's cremated on the outside. It's not good for you. And that can give you stomach upsets. Not serious, but just be aware. It's not good to have burnt anything. It causes you a few problems. Right, bacteria. Sorry, you didn't even see the slide. That's the burnt toast. Don't eat burnt toast. Bacteria need moisture to multiply and oxygen. They prefer food that is rich in protein, such as cooked meat and dairy products. And food can be categorized as low risk, high risk. We'll have a quick run through what you'd probably expect are low risk and high risk. Low risk foods, cereals, canned food, provided you've not had it for 20 years. Dried pasta and dried rice, jam, anything with sugar in it. Sugar, like salt, is something that helps as a preserve, which is why jam's called preserve, because it preserves itself. That's why when somebody from the local, what's the group? The ladies that meet. WI, that's the one. They'll give you jam that they've made, and it'll last for about 3 years, because it's brilliant. It's full of sugar, which is great. But they don't put sell-by date, so we wouldn't sell them in here, obviously. As soon as you introduce moisture to dry foods, the reaction starts, and it now moves across to the higher risk foods, because it can deteriorate just as easily now that it's wet. High risk foods, cooked meat and poultry such as chicken, beef, turkey, lamb and pork. Meat products like pâté and stews. Ready-made, pâté is a particular one. More so because I think there's maybe a bit more offal in there. If you look at your sell-by date on pâté, it will generally say use within 2 days of opening. You don't get a long shelf life on pâté. Seafood goes off really quick, and it can really give you a quite nasty tummy. So again, seafood, very short time from when you open it, you have to use it. Ready-made pies and pasties. Again, they should have dates on them, but if you buy it from the local bakery, like if you go down to, like Greg's, for instance, and you buy a steak bake, they just put it in a bag. There's no date on it. So you take it home, you think, well, I'll have that. And then my wife will say, you're not having that, I've made you a sandwich. All the rules and regulations you need for how you label food and how you store food, what temperatures and all that. Raw eggs, mayonnaise and quiche. Milk products, not just because people have allergies, but this is because milks can go off. Soya milk and cooked rice. How many people have a takeaway? And they order far too much. So for breakfast, they think, oh, I'll have some of that Chinese for my breakfast, heat it up. But it's still far too much. And you go out, come back at lunchtime, and you think, right, I've been to church. I'm pretty, Marty went on a bit, I'm starving, I am. Hey, starving. Oh, is there still some of that? Oh, stick it in the microwave, heat it up a third time. No. Only ever reheat food once. Don't ever, as much as you've been doing it for years, and I've never died, don't ever reheat food more than once, because it's bad for you. And never here. Right, we're nearly Raw foods. Now, I'm not sure if actually they talk about cooking of foods in this particular. I don't think they do. Cooking of certain foods. Does all food have to be cooked? Meat. Let's talk about meats, because that's one of the ones that is the big ones. Chicken. We've just learned that poultry is one of the most dangerous meats you can eat. Right? Beware, all you who buy. What you got to do with poultry? Quick sear on the outside, or have you got to cook it all the way through? And you know why you've got to cook it all the way through? And the bacteria exists in every bit of the meat, all the way through it. So you have to cook it all. No thin pink line in the middle. No, all the way through. Same with pork. Same with lamb to a certain extent. We'll leave lamb aside because it's a slightly different one. Nice, easy one. Again, whatever I'm saying here, you'll be given the instructions as to how you prepare food. Steaks. The steak have to be cooked all the way through. Why not? Right, so poultry, all the germs are all the way through the meat. They're in every single bit of the meat. If I went up to a cow, poor beast, because I wouldn't do this to a cow, and I just went straight up to it, and I got a knife to its rump end, and it said, "Oi," a minute. And I cut a nice big steak out, and I started eating it straight away. Would that be safe? Yeah, it probably would be. Probably would be. It's come straight out the cow. It's never touched oxygen, and it's fine. I wouldn't, right? But it's just about on the edge of okay. So if you're just on the edge of okay, what are you going to do with a steak? You're going to make sure that the outside, every bit that's on the outside, has been seared and cooked. Because unlike poultry, the germs aren't all the way through the meat. They're on the surfaces of the meat. So even if you like your steak blue, still make sure you get the outside bits cooked. And if there's blood dripping out of it, it's fine, so long as you've got all the outside bits cooked. So what about a burger? Need to cook a burger all the way through? Because as you grind it, lots and lots and lots of outside bits are all in that burger. And some people make the mistake of thinking, well, it's just like a steak. So burgers, cook them all the way through. Steaks, as you like them, but got to cook the outside. I wasn't sure if it covered that. I'm going to run through some of these next ones. Temperatures, if you were doing this course and you were going to get a certificate for it, you'd need to know these. Human body should be 37 degrees. And we all know that now because we're all pointing things at each other when we go through doors and taking your temperature. Bacteria begins to grow between 5 and 63 degrees centigrade. You don't need to know this because you're not getting a certificate for it. You just need to know if you follow all the rules that are put in place, these temperatures will all be covered, so there's nothing for you to worry about. Cross-contamination. As we've seen, when harmful bacteria are present in our food, they can multiply rapidly if subjected to the right conditions. Conditions is the thing. If we make sure we've got the right conditions and the kitchen is downstairs, absolutely fine. I'm not going to go through all of some of these next few slides. There's lots of different types of contamination. I'm not going to explain what norovirus is and all the different ones, E. coli and things. So there's lots of different types. Not going to tell you what they are. Don't need to. Again, there's a few I'm going to run through here because there's some more at the end I want to a bit more detail on. How do you contaminate a thing? Well, we can contaminate it from things falling off of us, false teeth, bits of whatever. The packaging itself, bits from the products that when it's stored, if you dig something straight out the sea, an oyster, it's probably got sand in it. You wouldn't serve it straight out the sea, would you? The restaurants prepare seafood correctly. Pests like rats and mice, and flies and all that sort of thing. Obvious things. The premises itself, again, it's the responsibility of the employer here to make sure that the premises are fit for purpose. So again, not something you have to worry about unless you see something and you go, oh, that's not right. Then you report it to the person you know that you have to report it to. And then Pest, premises, plant, like the screw that fell into my Irish stew. Somebody picked out and gave me back again. Thank you very much. Chemical hazards, we touched on these briefly. And again, it's pretty obvious. If you're going to start cleaning down the kitchen, make sure that there's not 4 plates of food all laid up, ready to be served. And you say, right, we need some more room. Right, well, and you spray all the disinfectant. And it's airborne, so some of it's going to go in somebody's food. So make sure that the environment's right. Move the food out the way, then clean up after yourself. Follow the cleaning rota and routine that you've been given, and you can't go wrong. Due care and diligence, reasonably practicable, and don't mix them. Don't ever mix them. Right, this is the nice one. Everyone likes this one. Here are the 14 things which people need to know if they're going to be eating food. Now, there are different responsibilities on what we can say. If somebody comes into our premises, it's enough to say, if you have any allergies whatsoever, please ask a member of staff, as we have full details of all the ingredients and all of the products, and possibly even other products that have been prepared on the premises. So this product might not have peanuts in it, but we might have served peanut-based products this morning. That fair? I've got an expert down here. And typically, that's the ones that I think most people would recognize the bulk of these. Celery, lots of people are allergic to celery. Don't go for one of these food fads where it's a celery diet where you only eat celery for 3 days. Because you will vomit. Because your body will eventually say, no more of this, and it'll try and get rid of it because it's got far too much of it. Gluten, there's a number of people who have got a gluten intolerance. Now, there's, again, some people will say, oh, I can't have gluten. No, I can't have gluten. Oh, did your doctor tell you? No, but I know I can't have gluten. Oh, I don't have swell up. Oh dear, right. You're possibly gluten intolerant then. Yeah, I tell you what, when I've had 14 sandwiches and 8 cakes and 17 of those rolls, I don't have bloat up. I tell you what, I don't have bloat up. Now, some people they don't have an allergy, so they won't have like anaphylactic shock, for instance, to something, but they may be intolerant. So, whilst it won't cause them necessarily serious harm, we don't want people to come to any harm whatsoever. So it's important that if they say, oh, I can't eat bread, then say, I won't serve you bread then. That's fine. What's in the bread? I won't serve you bread. You've said that you can't eat bread, I won't serve you bread. We've got other products which we could give you, you know. Crustaceans, anything from the sea. Lots of people have got some sort of reaction to things that come out of the sea. Eggs, it's a fairly common one. Fish, which do come out of the sea. Lupin, mollusks, like mussels and squid. Milk, dairy, fairly standard one. Mustard, which has got seeds and various things in it that people don't realise the ingredients, but they list mustard because of the number of ingredients that are very common. Nuts. Now, they've separated nuts and peanuts on this list, but nuts. It's, again, one of the ones most folk would say, oh yeah, be careful. Now, lots of people, if they have a severe intolerance, hopefully they'll tell you. And if you've made every attempt to make sure that what you're serving that person doesn't have anything in nuts in it, and there's been a recent case with the woman that went to Pret-a-Porter and had a sandwich and died, unfortunately. And yeah, it's one of those ones that lots of people, if they have a severe intolerance, they may well have a pen. Now again, you would not be expected to administer a pen without proper training. Now, it's actually really simple, unless you don't know what you're doing. Then you can make it really difficult for the person. If needs be, at some time in the future, Marty may agree that he's going to have some sort of course that covers us for first aid that includes EpiPens and things like that. There's nothing in there at the minute for that to happen. And there's perhaps some health and safety things that will kind of cross over on this that we've no plans to do at the minute, as far as I know. Why should I? But it may be things come up, you put your hand up, and it may be a thing that's better covered with a health and safety course that reflects back and touches on some of the things on the food hygiene course that you've done that might, with the two bits together, make the whole picture up for you. Sesame seeds, soya beans, sulfur dioxide and sulfates at levels above 10 milligrams or kilograms per 100 milligrams stroke litre. So those 14s are the ones that you're likely, if anyone has a... It's a... What's it like? It's a plant. It's a plant. I'm trying to think what lupin is like. Like an aubergine, is it? Oh, flowers. Right. I've no idea. Anyone who has a problem with lupin will probably tell you. Because it comes under the... Do you know how you know somebody is a vegan? Because they'll tell you. Yeah. So somebody who has a lupin intolerance, hopefully they will tell you. Yeah. Did you notice how I just went right past that one? Oh, Lynn, please, if you would. Yeah. In baking flours, right. So if some sort of... Yeah. Right. Thank you. I've learned something there. Right. So it's not always durum wheat. It's sometimes your pasta's made of something else. It's got lupin in it. And I'm sure if you get most breads from the bakery, they won't have lupin seeds, but some of your little fancy places where it's a little, they might put all sorts of things in it. Yeah. Thank you very much. As long as you're green, you're growing. As soon as you're ripe, you start to rot. Anaphylactic shock, that if somebody has a severe reaction to foods, they can go into anaphylactic shock. Because this is food hygiene, and this one is a level 2 catering course, I'm not going to cover that. If anything, that comes across first aid, stroke, health and safety. And what I don't want to do is give you any information on this so that you've got half an idea that you think you know what to do. Because a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous. I'm just going to say that's one of the things that can happen to people if they have, like, typically a reaction to peanuts. People have heard of this quite a lot in reaction to peanuts. That's all I'm going to tell you, because you're not going to learn enough about that to go away through that door and think, oh, next time I see somebody, no, don't do anything. That fair? Thank you. There we go. Right. Again, we'll have to go through these. As a food handler, it's essential that you control allergenic contamination as a consequence of not doing so could be fatal. Does it tell? Oh, it might tell you there. Right. So basically, again, this is something that will be covered for you. You're not going to be like a chef who will take and mix different ingredients into a finished product and serve it. So some of these bits you don't need to know. You'll be likely to be serving, if you ever serve something, a finished product with the relevant labels on it so that you know what you're doing. And if somebody says, oh, what's in it? You can say, there's everything that's in it, every single ingredient that's there. And as far as handling it, the handling and the storage, that'll be all in the packet as well. So some of this stuff, again, because it's catering and we're not caterers and we're not level 2 here, I'll just leave it at that on that particular slide. Because that's what you'll get, all that sort of thing. All the information that somebody needs to know will be on the packaging. Right, food storage, again, for a lot of this, job's done for you with the food labelling. Again, we're not creating a product and then having to put together a risk assessment on that product and a sheet and a tick list of all the different ingredients that the chef's used, including the type of oil he used, including how much water, was it tap water, has someone got an allergy to fluoride, things like that. And a lot of these are the same. I'll read that one actually. Oh, where's it gone? Right, so again, there are some legal things around how food should be labelled. That's as much the manufacturers and the distributors, and then even possibly ourselves, if we take it out of that packet. So these Tupperware things you get? So we've got a lovely package here with all the information you need on it, and we think, well, let's put it in this one. And you chuck away the box and all the labeling and everything else, and you don't know what's in it. So again, you will be told either don't take this out the box, leave it in there if you're serving it, or we will have a sheet that clearly labels the Tupperware, this is that, and for information on it, you'll find that in that place. You won't have to be able to go on the internet if somebody asks you, what's in this product? Well, hang on a sec. How do you spell that? It will be all there for you. Right. Nice one. Everyone's favourite argument about food. People argue about other things. Do we all know the difference? Use by, best by. Yeah. Use by says, use it by this date. So if it says 31st of October, Don't wait till the 4th of November and think it'll be all right. No, it says use by. If you want to use it in your own house, that's fine. If you're here and you come across a product, this will be part of your training. You'll say, oh, it's the 4th of November. Got this product here. It says 31st. Someone will say, oh, thanks very much. We'll dispose of that in the correct way. So don't use things that are out of date. Use by means use it by that date. I don't know, I'll have to check with Marty afterwards, if there's any slides here that you're particularly interested in, whether you're allowed to have a copy, because there's copyright on these, and I suspect you're not, but I'll check, but I suspect you're not allowed to have them. But we could get some information to you or guide you to a site on the internet that will give you this same information without it being copyrighted. Best before dates says, who likes donuts? Who likes the ones from Morrison's? You know, the jam ones and the custard ones, yeah? Or the chocolate ones. Eh. Now, you buy the pack, and they're sealed. They've got CO2 inside them. Great, nice and fresh. The second you open up that packet, it's like a race to decompose. You eat the first donut out of that packet. Oh, and it's lovely, isn't it? The sugar's nice and crisp. The dough's nice and giving. And there's hopefully you've got a lovely amount of jam or whatever you have inside it. Great. Within just a few hours, because there's fat in the actual donut itself, it then starts to soak in with the sugar. The sugar goes all slimy and sticky. Then the actual donut itself goes a bit. And sometimes you eat it, you think, well, I've started, I'm going to finish, but I'm not enjoying it, you know. So some foods you have to eat straight away. Now, that doesn't mean that that donut has gone off tomorrow, but it's horrible tomorrow, isn't it? It's just, you wouldn't eat a donut the next day. Not in our house, you wouldn't get one anyway. But you wouldn't. They're just no good. But they're perfectly safe. They just don't taste that nice. And again, there's products that say, look, let's say you went to a certain bakery in Chip and Sodbury, and you bought a lovely loaf, yeah? And you're on your way home. It's just been baked, and you put it in the front seat because you only had a loaf, you had nothing else. And you're driving along. Oh, you can smell this loaf, and you don't do this because it's hand, right? So you put a glove on, and a little bit of that. Oh, that's nice. And you have another little bit. Oh, that's lovely. You get home and your wife says, "Where'd half the loaf go?" Oh, sorry, that was me. It was lovely. Oh, it was lovely, that was. Now, 2 days later, it's still perfectly nice. It's nice, but you wouldn't have that urge just to eat the whole loaf in one go as you would as soon as it's just come out of the oven and it's still warm, you know. So that is when it's absolutely at its best. So best before could even on the bread be 3 days later. It'll still be pretty nice. It's a great bakery, that one in Sodbury. Lovely bakery. So it'll taste absolutely grand. Day 4, still perfectly safe, but it's just starting to go a little bit. It's just not quite as soft. But there's nothing wrong with it. And if it's been stored correctly, hopefully, and you look at the sell-by, there's still 3 days on this, it's okay. And by day 5, you're making toast with it rather than sandwiches. Day 7, you're making bread and butter pudding because you're not going to waste it. But provided you're within that same time frame there, it's still okay to eat. Nothing wrong with it. It's just best before that date. Now that then puts the onus on you to go, well, when the use-by date? Now, there is some pressure by some groups to put both dates on, to have a best before and then an ultimate use by date, because some people just haven't got the sense that God gave them to think, mouldy after 3 days, that can't be right, that must be all right. I only bought it 3 days ago and think it's okay to use. But again, you have to use your own common sense. Look at it, smell it, see if it looks, that's not right. Should that be oozing out of there? I don't think it should. So, but that, you knew the differences already. I've just expanded slightly as to why. Use by, use it. Best by, if you're here, you go to whoever. That bread, it's a bit, there's a fresh one there. We'll give that to the pigeons or whatever, so. Glad you all knew that one. Thought you would. Again, not going to go through this one, because if you're in a kitchen, you have to know that if you put a pasty in the fridge, you can't eat it 12 months later. Well, you could, but it's just going to taste rubbish. Because some people think if you put it in the freezer, it'll last for years. It won't. It extends the shelf life. It doesn't keep it forever. But again, different foods will allow you to have different times when they can be kept for. You don't have to know that because you'll be told that. Again, another big one. If you've frozen food that you need to thaw before, is at its best. Before using it, it's best to thaw in the fridge. Thaw things slowly. Try not to do a quick run it under the hot tap, because then you touch the outside and you think, that feels all right. Stick it in the pan, and the inside's still frozen. So by the time the outside looks well done, well, it must be cooked by now. Well, it would have been if it was, defrosted. But when there's ice in the middle before you started, it's nowhere near cooked. So it's really, really important. And this is probably the second biggest reason, and probably includes all your poultry meats. But one of the main reasons is people don't defrost correctly. And they don't cool food down. I don't know if they do this or not. They don't cool food down correctly. Food, you should try and chill food within an hour so that it's cool enough to then put in the fridge. That's why, the old comics you used to get, or boys, lads here, when you used to get a comic, Desperate Dan, for instance, somebody would have a pie. It's like Tom and Jerry. There's a pie on the windowsill cooling down, and Tom's always trying to nick the pie, because they're trying to cool it down before they put it in the fridge. Because they knew all about food safety and Hanna-Barbera way before we cottoned on to it. Defrost it separately, because what you won't realize is that as a thing starts to defrost, liquid will start to come out. So don't think, well, I've got some nice fresh cakes there, but the frozen stuff's fine. I'll just put that next to it. It'll move across and soak it up. Pretty obvious. And this is definitely the teaching how to suck eggs bit. But just don't forget, if you're going to defrost something, one, defrost it on its own. Try and make sure you put it in a container where when it defrosts, it doesn't roll straight off the worktop onto the floor, down the front of that, and it's there and somebody forgets to wipe it up. You've now got raw food, or in this case seafood, all over your kitchen, and then everything else that rolls on from that. So if it's a reasonable amount of stuff, nice deep dish, and if you can, cover it, so that, because even flies can land on frozen food. Common sense things, really. Again, you'll be told they'll have clear instructions how and when and where to do these things, and you'll have the right equipment, so you won't be given a little flat baking tray to defrost 4 chickens. You'll have something that's the correct thing for the job. I say it with confidence. Right. We're getting there. We're nearly there. Again, I'll very, very quickly go through this. When it's defrosted, you can't keep it for as long as you could have kept it when it was nice and fresh. So fresh chicken, put it in the fridge, be okay for 2 or 3 days. It's still sealed, still in the bag. It's in the bottom shelf. We all know about top shelves and bottom shelves. Don't put all the stuff that's going to drip on the top, because it'll drip through everything. Put the stuff that might drip in the bottom, so it can only go, well, nowhere else to go. If it's been frozen and then defrosted, you've very much shortened the shelf life of that product. So if, for instance, we knew we had somebody coming in for Christmas dinner, and we said, right, we're going to pre-prepare certain foods, and to make sure that everyone's got chicken and not pigeon, we'll pre-prepare certain things, and then we'll freeze them. And let's see, when are we having the Christmas dinner? It's the 7th? The 5th. Right, if we get all that stuff out from the 1st, we'll be well ready. Oh, yes, no problem, we won't be ready. 1st, yes, we're on it, we are. Hey, Mr. Prepared. No, get it out on the 4th, because you're going to use it the very next day, or even get it out that morning. Or if it's frozen, it gets defrosted from the night before, 24 hours in the morning it's ready to then be prepared for that afternoon's dinner, so that we'll have a lovely Christmas dinner. Safe. And do it at home as well, because it's always good. We've touched on this again. Cooking and reheating. Incorrect cooking and reheating of food is a serious food safety hazard. Again, like people who reheat things 3, 4, 5 times. Every time you heat something up and it cools down, bacteria love it. Then you heat it back up. You haven't killed that bacteria yet. Cools back down. Oh, love it, even more bacteria. Oh, heat it up again. Oh, lovely, lovely. And it cools back down. Each time you reheat food, because sometimes you'll only reheat food to like 55 degrees. That's just about right to eat. I don't want to burn my tongue. So you'll put it in the microwave for 30 seconds and go, give it another 10 seconds, that'll be all right. And you do that, that'll do. That's not cooked. That's not reheated properly. That's just cooked to the level that you want to eat it. So all that bacteria is, it's on holiday. It's having a great time. So again, reheat food once and reheat it again. You'll be told if you're ever handling food, which some people might be come Christmas, come the 5th of December, there'll be clear rules as to how you handle food, how you defrost food, how you reheat food if it's going to be reheated. Big one here in the middle. Do not use the same spoon to separately taste food. How many people do you see? And you go, I ain't eating that. They'll go, there's salt in there. That's better. What about this one? That's okay. Same spoon, it's been in your mouth. It's in 3 or 4 different things. You don't want to eat that, do you? And we never, ever do that here. Again, in your own house, poison yourself if you want. Don't do it here. These are common sense things. But again, it's easy to forget you're not in your own house, because it's like, well, this is Gateway, and you feel really comfortable here. Friends, you're one big family. It's like, well, it's just fine. It's like having the whole family around for dinner. And you revert back to the things you do in your house, and the little shortcuts you do, and the little things no. So again, you need to be careful that if you're preparing food here, all those responsibilities I told you about will fall heavily on you if you don't follow the rules properly. if you follow the rules, they are also your absolute protection that nothing's going to happen to you because you've done everything absolutely right. So there's two sides of it. Do as you've been instructed, you're safe. Don't do as instructed, none of us are safe, including yourself. All right. We're nearly at the end. Personal hygiene. Some of these are pretty obvious. Just keep your hands clean, keep yourself clean. There's not much more you can say about that, is there? Repeatedly wash your hands. Even if you washed them 5 minutes ago and you've been touching certain food types, wash your hands, especially if you've been touching meat. Wash your hands every single time you've touched meat. Now, I'm sorry if that then you need to have put loads of hand cream on that night, you know. I'll recommend my one to you, but you know, you can use any one you like. It's fine. For obvious reasons. I'm not going to read through that slide. For obvious reasons. Food handlers have responsibilities. Those responsibilities will be taken upon by your employer or by your supervisor or by the church. Go by the guidelines. You haven't got an issue. I'm not going to go through it further. Hand hygiene, again, it's the one that everyone's talking about. Just wash your hands. I'm a bit obsessed with hand washing. And I don't know if anyone else does this. This is at home, so it's slightly different. But at home, first thing I do when I'm about to start cooking, I get a basin full of hot, soapy water. First thing I do, so that as soon as I'm about to touch anything, whether it's been bread or low-risk foods like pasta, anything, touch something, do that. Quick wash. There you go. Try that. On again. And I just keep dipping in and out. Then every now and again I get rid of that water because I don't know what's in there now. I've used another big, deep thing of hot water. Because I just think when you're preparing food, you can't wash your hands often enough. Just don't make sure you're putting loads of soap at the same time into all the food. Yeah.
How would you dry them? Because you couldn't dry them on a proper towel.
At home, you're going to use your towel, aren't you? Yeah. Most people haven't got those paper dispensers or the hot air dispenser. So at home, you'll just use a towel. There's what I do and there's what you should do. If you're washing your hands, there's going to be paper towels. Use the paper towels. I'll go right back to what was said earlier. Anything that you need, be it gloves, aprons, footwear, masks, face masks and visors, hand dryers, hand soaps, antibacterial things, all of that will be provided. If you ever go into that kitchen downstairs, if you say, oh, can't dry my hands, I'll use this here dish towel. Dish towels are terrible things, full of germs. They really are. If you can, you would let dishes air dry. Now downstairs, for instance, we have got you take it out, you put it on top, and you let it dry, and you leave it. Because then nothing's touched it. Other than what is really in the air, reasonably practicable is the air teeming with different if it is, doesn't matter what you do, it's going to get onto it. So the next best thing you can do is let it drip dry. Don't use dish towels. At home we all do, we use dish towels. But in a food preparation, you don't use dish towels. Unless it's a fresh dish towel and you're using it for one small batch, you've just had a small group in. And there's 4 or 6 of you. You've come in for a meeting, you've made some tea, maybe a cake on a little plate. You've washed up, and you don't want to use all the machinery. You've washed, you've rinsed. You're going to leave it on the side. Well, if it's a fresh dish towel down there, yeah, you could probably get away with that. And somebody would tell you what you're allowed to do there. But in 99.999 out of whatever the O is, air dry. use the machinery that's downstairs in the kitchen and air dry. That's due care and diligence and the most practicable way of avoiding any other contamination to it. You haven't washed it all free of all those lovely germs and then got a dirty old cloth and rubbed them all back on again and then put them in the cupboard. So, no, paper towels. That was a long-winded way of saying paper towels. Yeah, paper towels. And it says, after handling raw meat, after handling cooked meat, after doing anything, going to the toilet, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. There's a course I can give people that's free, they're online, on how you wash your hands. And it's making sure you wash between your fingers, and the backs of the hands, and in there, and on there, and around the wrist. Take your watch off, and watch all around there. If you're required to, you will be given hand washing training, but don't just give it a quick. What we don't want you to do is be cutting up the chicken and then go, shh, I'll do it. You haven't done anything really, have you? So you should know that in certain cases you need to use and don't make sure you use something that gives you a lather. And the best way to wash your hands, it's not by keeping on. These are useful, these things here. They're really useful, but they don't clean your hands. They sanitize them, and if you've got anything on there, it'll have an effect. But the best way of getting rid of stuff on your hands is to wash it off your hands. So lots of lather, rinse after you've washed them. Everything's gone. Your hands are now as clean as they can practically be. If you then use some of that, you've cleaned them and you've sanitized them as well. But on its own, not enough. Wash your hands. Yeah? How are we all doing for time? I've got a few jokes I can work in. Yeah. At least 20 seconds. I know the government say 20 seconds, but at least 20 seconds. That's no time at all. And again, you may have washed your hands, you may have sanitized them, you may still be required to use gloves. And they may be plastic gloves like that one, or they may be food handling gloves, which are typically blue. Not the ones you get down the SO garage, with a great big hand on it. Again, all of that will be provided. If it's needed, it will be provided. You won't ever find yourself in a situation where you have to go in your back pocket and use the one you had yesterday, because that's already in the bin. Isn't it? Yeah. And don't take gloves home, because if I peel them off like that, I can use that again when I go home. Don't do that. They're not that expensive. And certainly don't bring them back in here again. I said, it's not my thing to say. It's advice. Again, I'm not going to read through all this. Here, I'm so concerned about food hygiene, I shave all my hair off. Honest. Smoking. You don't smoke around food. You just don't smoke, let's be honest. But jewellery, if you were to take your watch off, honestly, if you were to take your watch off, I wash mine. Mine's is waterproof, so I'll wear mine in the shower, but I still take it off and I'll wash it all under, because I know all in there, all in the bits, in the little bit of chain bits, because it's right next to my wrist, and the sweat and bits of dirt and all sorts go in there, and it's been there for days. All growing, lots of germs. I'm now filthy. I have to start smelling much. Hand sanitizer, indeed, yes. Rings. Gentlemen tend to wear just the one. I was an engineer. You wouldn't even wear your ring to work because a bit of machinery would rip your finger off. So you would take your ring off anyway. But ladies, you have lots of rings, especially stones. And the amount of gems that are in those stones, you wouldn't believe. Whereas a nice band, nice and easy to wash. You can take your band off, wash it in the sink. Don't let it drop down into the hole, because your wife will kill you. But yeah, so best way, take your jewellery off. Put it somewhere safe. Wash your hands. Once you're finished doing whatever task it is you're doing, and it's all gone, put them all back on again. You know. Perfume, again. I naturally smell good, so I don't wear aftershaves. But some people, like Cruella de Vil, would have a waft, for instance, of perfume. If you can smell it and it reeks, it's in the air. If it's in the air, there's particles of it in the air which are going to land on food. And someone's going to pick up that food and go, that's definitely one of those pies that's got that Chanel No. 5 taste to it. I can, you know. So don't if you know you're going to be coming to work in a kitchen, you wouldn't anyway, because some kitchens are going to be going home smelling of grease, fat, and all sorts. But here, if you know you're coming to work in the kitchen, don't overdo it. You know, it's nice to smell nice, but you don't have to be reeking of it, because it is going to contaminate food. And it makes me sneeze. So, even if it's just for me. Protective clothing. Again, covered this before. Everything and anything you need will be provided. What you don't want to do is have all your lovely protective clothing on and go, oh, here you go to the loo. I'll just run off to the loo and go into the toilet and then come back out again and carry on. So if you've got things, take it all off. By all means, you have to spend a penny, whatever, go to the toilet, wash your hands, sanitize, come back, put on new aprons and all the rest of it, new gloves. I hope that's obvious. But, we're nearly done. Right. Wounds and sores. If you cut yourself, you cover it up. You all know the reason why you use blue plasters in the kitchen, because you can see them. So, if you've got eczema, a bad skin condition, God bless you, but you can't be working with food if you've got a lot of flaky skin falling into the food. So as much as you may want to help with activities within the church, somebody will ask you if you could better be used somewhere else, because it's just one of those practical things. If you've got, so any open wounds, they have to be covered. Sometimes just even say, actually, you know what, I'm not going to work in the kitchen today. I've got a few cuts. I've got a band over them. But as soon as you put a band on, you get sticky around the edges and stuff sticks to it. And even when you wash it, it's still there. So you're even a little bit more compromised, even with a plaster on. So sometimes it's best not. Say, would you mind? Now the kitchen's going to go, get in there, do your job. But here, we can afford that we're not going to force you to go in. You volunteered. Get back in there. We are nearly done, I promise you. This is one that people like, because everyone thinks they know, but they always get one of them wrong. So, chopping boards, red boards, raw meat. Red, blood, sort of. most of them are fairly kind of obvious as to why it would be. Yellow board for cooked foods. Blue, because it's the sea, for fishy things. White for bread and dairy. And now there's one in here that's only recently gone in. It hasn't been around for that long. White for bread and dairy. Green for washed vegetables. So if it's stuff that you've got out of a packet, like, I mean, it's got a picture there of a capsicum there. Stuff that has been washed and prepared, ready for sale and for consumption. Green board. If you've just dug up your spuds and they've still got soil, and we said soil's dangerous because you might not know you had that thing until 6 weeks later. If you're cutting up dirty old stuff like that, anything that's got soil on it, brown board. And again, it kind of looks brown. Green's got one of those like traffic light systems, red, amber, green, red stop, green go. Green, vegetables, the countryside, that's sort of obvious. Brown, the soil, you know. Blue, the sea. Red, blood. So it's not difficult to keep up. This is one that you might find useful. I don't know if we've got it on the wall in the kitchen, but I think we would do if it was up to me. And then we've now got a purple one, and this is a new one. Anyone who did a course 10 years ago would never have saw a purple one. Purple is for those ones where someone has a particular allergy, and you're preparing a food. It may be that you're preparing something just for that person, because they've said, Marty, would love to come to the Christmas dinner. Thing is, they go, that's fine, we've got this here purple board. We can do that for you. So purple boards now for your, you know. Yeah. When I first saw you at this, I said, who's that? And I'm, didn't see all the hair. Yes, you can.
So you've got a purple board for things like allergens.
Yeah.
So what if you've got someone who is like gluten-free,
Yeah.
but then you've got someone who's gluten-free and they also can't have fish or whatever, or other
Right.
allergens,
Yeah.
what would you do? Would you have several?
Well, if they can't have fish, then they're not having fish anyway. So they wouldn't be affected by the blue board.
No, but what if you use the allergen board, but they're allergic to like 2 allergens? And so what you've got the same board?
Right, you would, yeah, because again, reasonably practicable. It may mean that you go back to basics and take it over to the sink, wash it, rinse it, bring it back, do the second product. Because the other ones just don't apply. So it may mean, got to go through the process of, but if that's what you have to do to keep people safe, that's what you have to do. So same board again, because it all comes under the, if it doesn't fit, because you've got an allergy, reasonably practicable, what else can we do? We haven't got a rainbow board. So it's back to that board. To answer it? Yeah, good. Sorry? Again, I would say you would use, because it's meats, any raw meats on your red board. Some people think raw chicken should be on the blue board. No, again, you would need to wash them down. So if you're using meats, don't mix your meats, because some meats you can cook the surface, some have to go all the way. So again, you're right, yeah. Again, if you're faced with that situation, you'll just have to wash them down. Do one batch, wash all that equipment down, including the knives, and then go back and do the second batch of food that you have to do. Sometimes practical, there isn't any other way around it, because in an ideal situation, you may well have in the kitchen, in a catering environment, an area where you've got your red meats and fish, and then all other poultry and pork, but in a small kitchen, you just haven't got that. So you just have to do I won't mix and match, but then I'll go back, wash it down, and do the next one. Again, we're not operating as a caterer. if anything, we're doing teas and coffees for people at the moment. So, you know. I will check that one out, though, because I'm not aware that there's any other alternative to having other than a meat or a fish board, which are both raw products. A couple left. Cleaning and disinfecting again. You can't just think, spray everything with bleach and leave it till it dries. That'll be fine. So there's a process of cleaning and rinsing, and again, the products that you will use won't be the ones that you will buy down a B&Q because it's a bit stronger. It will be what's provided here. It'll have been checked already, and someone will have said, right, the procedure for cleaning down the kitchen at the end of the day is we wash down typically with a detergent. That washes it down, maybe even an antibacterial detergent. We then have to rinse all of that residue of stuff away. And then we may well do a wipe down with another preparatory product that disinfects and cleans, that is safe because you use it to the right quantities, to be allowed to dry it air dry, so that when food then goes on it, and lots of these things that you have, they don't actually leave a surface. So you may say, oh, I saw that was damp, and then it was dried. It's fine. The way the chemical manufacturer makes this product, once it's dried, unless you wet it again, the product's not going to come back off that surface. So if you're using breads and buns and things, that's absolutely fine. Other areas you may say, well, I won't use that. Again, you'll be told what you can use. If that particular board's going to get wet again, and then reinvigorate the product that was on it so that it's now active, they'll say, don't use it on that. And you'll be told exactly what you can use things on and what you can't use things on. Expert in the room. Good stuff. I'm aware I'm not doing a full food health and safety, food handling course here. You're not getting your food handling certificate. I'm covering the sort of basics of things here. Yeah. And again, somebody will run you through what the processes are for how you go through a clean down in the kitchen, so that you're not leaving a residue that could be dangerous to somebody. I think we're just about at the end. Nice thing it says here. Yeah, your employer must provide personal protective equipment, PPE, and clothing if necessary. 6 days of cleaning, last couple of slides. Pre-clean, main clean, rinse, disinfect, in the case you've got your steamer, final rinse, dry, air dry by evaporation where possible. All done. Any? No. The answer is no.
Any questions for Mark? No. No questions. Okay. I would like to thank Mark, who has taken a course which generally takes 5 hours and crammed it into 2 hours and 20 minutes. So can we give this man a round of applause?
Thank you.
I know that all of you wanted to do the 5-hour course, but I'm really sorry. I would like to thank you, Mark, for just taking the time, going through all the slides, bringing it. Really, what we wanted to do here was what's called due diligence. You with me? So at least you've got thoughts going. If you're in the kitchen and you see that we're lacking something, come to me, come to Sue, we'll get it ordered. Does that make sense? Okay. Also, if you're not sure and you have a question, come to Mark. Mark has not just food hygiene at level 2, he's got it at level 3 at least. Means that he can actually teach the course. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Also in the church we have Kate Cole, who's level 3 as well. Level 2 that I know of, me, I'm level 2. My wife is level 2. My son is level 2. Daniel Whitaker, level 2. Karen Salter, level 2. Anybody else level 2? Kirsty, level 2. Anybody else in the room, level 2? Isaac, level 2. So, Evelyn, level 2. So we have a lot of people. But what we want is not, go to everybody who's level 2 and ask and get a different answer, but we want to be all on the same page. Does that make sense? Yeah. But if you do have a question, do ask fundamentally Mark or myself. Just as Mark said, I might know the answer, but I'll find out for you. Is everybody happy?
Yeah.
When I was doing the course, I thought there was a few wee things I want to get printed out and put up in the kitchen, just so you don't have to remember it all. So it's up in the kitchen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would like to thank you very much for your time. Thank you for doing this. What would you say? Yeah, course with us. God bless you. See you at home. Thank you, Mark. Give that Mark a round of applause, please, guys.